This is Jennifer Tomlinson, your host of the Black Woman Be Well podcast, and thank you for joining us today. Today's episode is all about relationships, and it's entitled Falling in Love with Potential. Now, some of you guys might have heard that title, seen the title, and you already know what it means. Maybe through your own testimony or personal experience. But for everyone else, stick around. We're going to explain what that actually means and if that resonates with you or not. If this is your first time tuning in, Black Woman Be Well is a podcast dedicated to the discussion of health and wellness through the unique perspective of Black women. And healthy relationships is definitely a big part of that conversation and why I thought it was really important to talk about it. So let's just get into things. I'd like to introduce our special guest for the day. And I'm all excited like that because they're all close people to me. So returning back to the show is Miss Jessica Vizan, my best friend. You guys already met her. Want to say hey?
Hey.
Also joining us is my sister. You guys met her as well, Miss Claudine Tomlinson Burney.
Hello, hello.
And also joining us today is my very good friend and our special guest, Miss Saguinn Johnson. Want to say hey?
Hello.
And no, this is really good because she's my friend. We all already do girl talk with each other, but she's also a licensed mental health counselor. So we're hoping that through this chat, she can drop some gems on us. For those that are listening, you guys can maybe get some tips or just get some good advice from an actual expert and not just me rambling. And she's very heavily credentialed. She earned a bachelor's in counseling psychology from Oakwood University. And she also received her Master's of Science in Clinical Psychology from Troy University. And I honestly didn't know that until I got her information down for this show. And so she's very credentialed to help us out today. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate you joining us today.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right, so you guys ready for some girl chat?
Yes, let's do it.
Do it. Okay, so the episode is called Falling in Love with Potential. And what I meant when I picked the topic for today was really kind of like a personal topic. I saw myself in relationships where I wasn't paying attention to what was right in front of me, and I was falling in love with what the person could be and getting caught up in that. So to start us off, anybody want to share, like, when they enter relationships, what do you look for?
Oh, boy, that's good.
It's been a while since I've entered a relationship. But I think, if you were asking 20-year-old Jessica what she was looking for, which is when I, got into a serious relationship, I was looking for someone like my father. And I say that because all the good things of my father, right? A protector, someone who could provide, someone who was a friend. At least that's what I tell myself. That's what I was looking for, right? Because I think what I actually got, not necessarily in my current relationship, but in relationships prior, were people who presented themselves as protectors, but who really weren't. Mm-hmm. And people who presented themselves as, kind of put together and ready for life, essentially, that really weren't. And I think where you were talking about kind of in your intro around ignoring your intuition, I knew in my gut, this really isn't, you really are not what I know that I need in my life, but I continue to go down that same path because I see kind of glimmers, my dad does things in that way. Right. So maybe if we kind of stick it out, I can, kind of give you some advice and some help and kind of build you into the man that I need you to be.
Buildaman.com.
Yeah. I think we've all kind of been stuck in that situation. So
you consciously looked for traits of your father. Was that subconscious or conscious?
That's always been conscious. I mean, I told my dad growing in high school, I was like, hey, I'm going to marry a guy just like you. He's like, well, there are no more idiots left. So
Daddy's funny.
It's like, dang, hurt my soul. But yeah, no, that was very conscious.
That's interesting because she had a role model, positive father figure. So you were looking for someone, positive that was like your father. But there's so many that don't have that positive male role model, but they still end up gravitating to either what they didn't have as a father or the negative that they had as a father. You see what I'm saying? So whether positive or negative, you could still gravitate to those characteristics in a potential mate. You know, for me, it definitely was different than it was for her. When I was younger, 19, 20, honestly, it was about how I felt. Did you give me butterflies? Were you cute enough? You know, a lot more was superficial at first. You know, that attraction. Not to say that when we get older, we don't care how they look.
Right.
But I'm saying back then, it was more important to me. A lot of superficial stuff, you know, like that. Ooh, how do I get jittery and whatever when you come around, and ooh, is he smooth, and you know, stuff like that are not really that important anymore. You know what I'm saying? And so then after that initial, then it's like, okay, yes, I want you to treat me good, but as long as I'm feeling some type of way around you, I'll overlook things. Now, of course, there's other things that come into play that you know, make you overlook things. But for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to overlook. But I overlooked a lot of things because of the lack of a positive father role model. So hence, a lot of mistakes were made. A lot of bad relationship choices.
And I bet it was like you didn't even know you were overlooking them, because how do you know what you're looking for if you never had an example anyways? Like
exactly.
you said. Yeah. So you were overlooking things that you didn't even realize. You didn't even know what you were really looking for. You did the best you could at the time.
Exactly. And as long as they did something positive here and there, it's like, okay, well, this is good.
Could work.
Yeah. You make excuses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My situation, it's interesting. I like how Jessica mentioned 20-year-old Jessica. Well, I guess 20-year-old Claudine. I don't know if I was looking for anything per se, but I can say for me, if I was going to be in a relationship with anyone or go out with anyone, they'd have to take care of me. Like, not take care of me, but they'd have to wine and dine me. They'd have to wow me. And they'd have to be driven. There were some, I guess, qualifications innately that I don't know if I actually... I never had a list or anything like that, but I feel as though they at least had to have some type of similarities to my ambition, so to speak. But ultimately, I always felt as though the man should court the woman. Right. So when you take me out in the right way, and then when I'm out, then treat me like a queen. So those are the things that I kind of looked for, and if I didn't see it right away, then I would say I would not be impressed, and then just kind of just move on or look towards something else.
So my sister was a bit of a fly girl.
What are you talking about?
She was super cute. No,
yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Super cute. There'd always be a dude in a nice car roll up.
Okay.
Stop it.
She was fly.
Oh my God.
I can't say the same. I grew up in Orlando, where it's kind of rough in these streets. That's what I'm saying.
My sister. Stop it.
But yeah, no, I no, as your sister, I agree. You definitely had high. You set the bar high. So like, if the guy couldn't come to the bar, it was like not a question. Like, move on to the next. Yeah.
Yeah, I cut you off in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what I was looking for. I think in a lot of ways I resonate with what you were saying. I definitely I wanted someone that looked like or acted like my dad in the way that my dad treated me. But I just never saw a lot of examples for that. So I ended up just kind of like, what can I take? Or what do I like? And I ended up just gravitating to, honestly, just anybody. And I mean, with a certain extent, like, please have some teeth and, not.
Oh,
like,
my word.
Yeah, or not be horrible.
Or gold teeth or.
No gold teeth. There were some standards. But in a lot of ways, I mean, there was just so many different types of guys. They could be uneducated, like informally educated or formally educated, older, younger, taller, shorter. What I usually did was I would enter into situations similar to what you were saying, Saguinn, like, well, that doesn't really feel all that great, but I think I can like make it work, or let me help you. So what you were saying, Jessica, like, let me take you to the college campus to help you register for classes, or here's a website to show you how to write a resume. I feel like a lot of times I might have played down my intuition, and maybe as Black women, we don't realize how powerful our intuition is at a young age to really cultivate it. And we end up downplaying it or dumbing it down, so that we can, because we like the potential, like there's potential here. Let me wait and see, you know? And so my next question kind of falls in line with this. How much of this is, and for our expert in the room, how much of how we pick our mate is connected to like our own self-worth or self-esteem?
Oh, most of it. You know, I see that play out in so many of the people that I meet with as far as for work. But in my own life, you know, coming from a past of abuse, you know, in my past, sexual abuse in my childhood, but not just me, my mom. She comes from an extensive abuse history, which made her a certain way. Now, she didn't get help for it until she was well in her 40s, which at that point, I'm older. Yeah. So the person that she was back then was very broken. And, you know, her choice of men and picking and divorces, you know, and just, you know, it played out in her children's lives. So not only what we saw, what we experienced, what was our map of what relationships look like, you know, when I came of age to where I was like, okay, serious relationships or even future I really didn't think too much in the future. You know how some people can say, okay, you know, I'm high school graduate and then I'm going to college and then I know I want to go into nursing, and they kind of plan out, they know what they want to do. Even if it doesn't quite end up that way, they know that was not me. I was like, okay, yeah, I guess I'll go to school. No one pushed me to go to college. It wouldn't have been a big deal if I didn't go. But I went anyway, you know. And it wasn't even a, you know, we've got money for you to go. No, you have to take out some loans if you want to go. You know what I'm saying? Okay, well, what do I take in college? Oh, you know, I don't know. There's nothing that I really want to do. You know, that's kind of how it was for me. I was not thinking future and this is, you know, my goal. I didn't think like that at all. I didn't, you know. So when it came to getting in relationships, like when I hear both of these women speak about, you know, things they kind of already knew, standards they already had, a lot of that I didn't have. But it wasn't even in my frame of mind to have standards because I didn't see any of that played out, not just in my household, but even in my extended family. Yeah. There was no roadmap to what that looked like. So for me, it was making a lot of monumental mistakes until between experiences and education that I received myself, that I learned, you know, years after the fact. Okay, this is not how it was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying it plays out this way for everyone, but it plays out this way for a lot, because my story I see play out. Right. So many people I meet with, they're sitting there saying stuff that I can completely relate to. And from them telling me what their childhood was like to what teenager to what, you know, early 20s, most of the time it follows the same kind of roadmap. Now, you have your diamonds in the rough that can come through that and still, you know, have some mindset that I'm not going to be what that was for me. Because some people can do that. So I'm not saying this is everybody. But a lot of people fall into that abyss because of their past. Yeah. Yeah.
I think what you said about your childhood playing into your self-worth and then playing into how you just ended up picking people resonated with me. And we've said this before, Jessica, that we've said it on the show before that you and I watch Auntie Iyanla. And yes, we know she's a TV psychologist, but very therapeutic sometimes. So she has her antics and stuff, but then sometimes she's like, she'll drop knowledge, you know? And when she uses that word, daddyless daughter, and I forgot what episode it was, and I obviously like was crying to death because some things started to click for me. Because in my own childhood, I have a great stepfather who came into my life at a young age, and I mean, he really created a standard for me about like what type of man to look for, and just really nurtured me and took care of me. And so I owe a lot of who I am to him. And then my biological father, who I have a relationship with, but, you know, I just didn't grow up with him. I never thought, like, there was a problem or anything. Like, you know, yeah, he's around, and when I see him, it's all good. I love him. I call him for his birthday. We send each other gifts. But I didn't realize, still, though, I was still a daddyless daughter, even though I had a wonderful stepfather. But my father, like my biological father, wasn't in my life. And thinking about how that ended up kind of playing itself out in my subconscious, because I think I was lost for a bit. I don't think the whole concept of self-worth and that reflection and that work I'm doing now, I didn't do that at 16. I mean, I didn't have no conscious of who I was as a woman, as a black woman, coming into age and coming into my gender and my race and who I am on this planet. I didn't do any of that kind of heart work to establish, like, this is who you are, be confident, be strong, or this is what you need to look for. And a part of that might have been a product of just, you know, not knowing, like not having my dad there, it not really being a problem to me consciously, but not knowing what it was doing subconsciously, and how it led me to not knowing what kind of guy to pick and why I kind of randomly just, you know, oh yeah, you seem nice enough and you like me. And that's another thing with like self-worth. If they give me attention, then okay, let's just see if it works because you've given me attention, you know. And that, I could see how that definitely could be a product of my own childhood as well, you know.
Yeah, that, I mean, what you've said is very poignant and very deep, and I can see that the void was there, like we said, subconsciously. And I think with my experience, of course, there's an age difference. So I don't know if we want to mention the age difference, but
you're the older one, so I'm fine.
Okay, there's a 13-year age gap between me and my sister. But
you would never know that. 13.
No.
Yeah,
she looks good.
I know. I would never think 13 years apart.
I should have kept my mouth shut. Delete that part. Delete that. No,
I did not delete that.
So you said, like, so from in my experience, I did grow up with my biological father because my mommy and daddy, they were married and we were living in New York. And so now that I'm thinking about it, I never really thought when I came of age to date, because I know both mommy and daddy were like, you're not dating anybody till you turn 20 years old. I'm like, okay, that's not realistic, but okay.
And hold on, it's so weird because in a Jamaican household, you go from like, you can't even say the word boy in front of the same sentence. And then all of a sudden, like, why aren't you married?
Yeah,
what?
yeah, there's no, yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
So, I think for me, I just knew that there was just certain things within me that either based on what our expert has mentioned, that I've saw, witnessed, and subconsciously I knew, okay, well, I'm at this point in my life. I feel as though if anybody else is going to enter it, what are you doing to help the situation? That's how I feel. Are we going to help each other? Are you going to, you know, make the situation better? Because if not, then I feel like you're dead weight. And I don't want me to sound harsh, if that sounds harsh, but in my mind, I feel as though, okay, if you're going to enter into my world, or we're going to enter this together as a couple, then what do you have to bring?
Did you have that? Is that you speaking like today, or was that your opinion even when you were?
My opinion back when I was teenager going into my 20s, I had no plans of getting married.
Yeah.
I wanted to do missionary work. I wanted to travel around the world and do missionary work. That was my goal. I had no intentions of having a relationship.
Yeah.
When I went to, after I graduated from Valencia and went to FIU, I didn't have, when I say I was there to study, my goal was to graduate, get my diploma, and move out. So...
And then you met Richard.
Then I met Richard at Valencia. He worked in the bookstore, and it's weird. I'm telling you, I'm weird because I'm so slow when it comes to guys in relationships. Because Richard liked me for a long time, and I had no clue. My friends at Valencia would tell me, because I used to work. I did work study in the library, and then on days when I was off, my friends would say, "Girl, that boy like you." Like, who are you talking about? He come here. I said, what you mean? Like, yeah, we're just friends. He come up here every day asking for you. I'm like, what do you mean? So come to find out, Richard, working at where he did, he had access to the go-karts or the trolleys, which is, on campus and you're young, that's like big time. You're not walking, you like the golf carts. So I guess he would come visit me. Of course, the days I was there, we'd talk for a little bit, and that would be it. And then we just developed a rapport. And even then, I was just like, he's a nice guy.
That just goes to show you the level of the bubble she was in. Like, dudes was not on her radar at that. And I remember, that's why I'm chiming in. Like, she really was like, I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
Either you with me or you're not.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting, though, that we're sisters. We grew up together. But because we had different experiences with our dad, our relationships, the way we process relationships is totally different. Because I'm not saying this is accurate or not. But, I mean, there could be something to the fact that because you had him longer,
maybe.
And versus me, not because, our parents divorced when I was a baby.
Yeah, Jennifer was
really young. And I had a
young.
gap before my stepfather came into my life. So
yeah.
I had no male figure those very formative years, And you were very much, like, you had a level of self-worth, for sure, where it was like, I'm doing this, I got this plan, I'm in this mode, and, like, either you with it or you're not. And here I am, I'm like, who wants to join? Who wants to walk with me, down this life path? Have you guys ever been, like, in toxic relationships? Like, I know you and Richard are so meant to be together, and I love my brother-in-law, and I'm so glad he's a part of my family, and I'm glad that you guys have a great relationship. And my dear friend Jessica has been, how long have you been married?
7 years.
7 years. But if we can, like, think in the past, can you remember, like, have you ever been in a toxic relationship before and you stayed in it when you knew you should have left?
Mm-hmm. I have definitely been in toxic relationships. But both of my toxic relationships were marriages. The first one lasted 2 years, and there was physical abuse and cheating involved. I didn't know that I was being cheated on, but the physical abuse, I wanted us to get help. So it wasn't like, I'm going to leave you and divorce you and, but due to other circumstances that I have no control over, because you can't control the other person, it takes two people to decide to work on a relationship and make it work. And if one person doesn't want to do that, you can't make them do that. So that didn't last past 2 years. My children's father and I were married for 13 years, and he was unfaithful the whole entire time. Now, I didn't know until about 3 years in that he was, but when you said, a relationship that's toxic and you should leave, but I didn't feel like I should leave, one, because I was married. So I was really so the first time I knew that this was happening, because if that was happening and it was somebody I was dating, I would have been out of there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But this is now, by the time I found out, I already had my son. So I'm married. Marriage vows are extremely serious to me. When I get up, I mean what I say. So for me, it wasn't just, oh, I'm out of here. It's like, okay, let's see what we need to do. Now, granted, I mean, people can have their different opinions as far as how long you last or stay or how do you deal. But I felt like I did everything I possibly could do, whether counseling, whether, going and seeking pastoral help, whatever we could do or I could do, trust me, I tried to do. After 13 years, I was done because it was like, okay, your behavior, you're not trying to stop. You say you are, but you're really not trying to. So that was a little different because, like I said, it was a marital relationship. Right. So it's not, oh, well, this is toxic. I know I need to leave. No, this is my husband and we have children together. It's not that simple. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so there's a lot of people out there, that will chime in to people that this happens to and they say, oh, I can't believe you stayed there or you can't believe. And all I can say to that is, you never know what you will do or won't do unless you're in the situation.
Yeah, no, that's true.
If you haven't lived it, don't be judgmental to somebody else on the outside because it's easier said than done how you will react. So both were very toxic relationships. I learned, like I was saying before, about a lot of things that I didn't think about or didn't know. I learned it. I learned it the hard way, but I learned it. It's because the person I am now, and if I ever am to get in another relationship in this life, I'm a completely different person going into anything now than I was back then. Now, I really don't like the fact that I had to learn it the hard way, but some of that was choices I made, and I own that, because at the end of the day, what we didn't get when we were raised, or we still have a choice, in what we do. We always have choices. So now I take what I've learned, experiences and all, and it helps me. It helps me relate to people when I'm speaking with others. I feel like it makes me a better therapist to be able to relate with people on a lot of different levels as far as what they're going through.
Walk, so you can relate to your clients.
And, because there's so many people that go through, but now with eyes wide open, anything in the future, like I said, my standards are completely different. And there are no fog on the glasses at all. You know what I'm saying? I know exactly what I will and will not put up with. Yeah.
I think it's a good point you mentioned that you learned from it, because that's a great step, because unfortunately there are folk who's still in it who unfortunately haven't learned and may never learn anything from it. So, and the fact that you're playing it forward to where you're helping other folk, your clients, to realize it and say, hey, I'm not just talking about it. Yes, I'm an expert in this field, but I also went to this too, and I think people would respect that even more.
Right.
So
for sure. And I think there are people who are in it who don't know how to get out.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, after 13 years, you finally came to a place like, all right, enough's enough. Yeah. What was it for you that kind of changed?
Well, honestly, a big part of me staying, because I don't know that I would have endured it for 13 years if it wasn't for my children. But then, I started to think, is this healthy for my children? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was like, okay, it was sitting down and asking myself the really hard questions. Either you're going to stay in this and just live it however it plays out, and maybe he'll be the one to say, or you're going to make the decision to leave and so that life can look different.
Yeah.
And I asked myself that question several times before I actually got to the point where I answered it and took action. So it wasn't like the first time I asked myself that, I was like, bam, I got the answer. Now I'm out of here.
Yeah.
No.
So it wasn't like a thing happened that pushed you over
No,
the
it
edge?
was a thing that happened.
And
It definitely was, you know. Like I said, there was a lot of advances made to make things better. And he went along with them. So it wasn't like, no, I'm not going to go see. Anything I suggested, he did. So, you know, that would make me hopeful.
Yeah.
You see
and
what I'm saying?
More time would go by.
And then more time would go
and then
by.
next, something else happened.
And then something else. And so the last thing that happened, it was like a switch clicked in my head.
Yep.
Like literally like and it was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I can
relate to that. My last relationship was not healthy. I knew, like, you know, like the intuition thing, I knew it wasn't right. I know your story is different because you were really just blindsided, honestly, after you got married. But for me, from the beginning, I knew things weren't right. And unlike you being married, I was not married. And for some reason, maybe others can relate to this that's listening to this. Marriage, I was not married, but I still was like 100% loyal. I wanted to make it work. I wanted to just, I don't know, fight for it. And because of like, yes, I loved them and we had this long relationship in the beginning, like friendship in the beginning. And so there was a history. But I knew from the beginning there was just, he would lie. He couldn't even lie right. I would catch things and, like I would just like, well, okay, well, you don't have actual physical evidence. It's just your gut. So what are you going to bring to the table? Are you going to leave because of a gut feeling without any evidence? Or are you going to believe what he's telling you? And that's like trust. Love is trust. You have to trust him and trust this. And so I sat in it for a long time. And even after my intuition was validated, when I found out he was cheating for most of our relationship, and just the extent of the lies, I still tried to make it work. And it just took, and it was just still foolishness going on. But I don't know what happened at the end there. It was just like this one added thing that was unnecessary just put me over the edge. I was like, I don't know where I found the strengths of my ancestors to be like, to be like, finally like,
Jennifer, it's time.
Just like that. And it clicked like you said in my head, like, I'm not doing this anymore, and I don't need this, I don't need that, I don't need any of this in my life. And I don't know, that self-worth that I had been missing just came rushing in. Like, I'm much better now because of it, but that's a hard lesson to learn in a difficult way, to find yourself through that kind of toxicity. But I had no foundation. That was like the only way I could learn it. And I finally had the strength. And it took every ounce of strength. It took Jessica listening to me cry on the phone. It took Ian to fix my life. It took me and my mother becoming friends, because she'd always been my mom. But in my 30s, she became my friend. And we share stories now. I'm like, why you ain't tell me, when nobody told me this, Mom? Like, and hearing her story as a woman, like, I wish I had known this, because I thought love was one thing, and it's totally different from what you're telling me. And that goes to show you, like, how culture can really play into how you pick a mate. Because if you don't talk about relationships because you're just a girl and you're too young, and no one tells you real life things until you're older.
And don't rely on your friends, and
your friends have horrible advice, right? And so you end up making horrible mistakes. And so, but my mother becoming my friend really helped me, I think, at that time to be like, I don't have to put up with this, like, and just cut that person out of my life permanently, But I didn't have the strength like that early. It took 3 years of a toxic relationship to find myself, I guess, and to have the strength to be like, I'm done.
I'm glad. Well, glad you found the strength eventually, and I'm pretty sure you're a better person because of it, and you're moving on to bigger, better things, and you've learned from it. And do you feel like you're in a situation where you're helping others at this point? Or?
Well, I think that's I have the energy and the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth now to do something like this show, to want to talk about it. Because, like, I feel like other women, we experience the same things and we don't talk about it together. And we don't know that other people are going through it and we can't learn from each other. Like, I don't want any woman that's in a toxic relationship right now listening to this not know that you can get out of it. Like, so I hope that, you know, this is a great place to do good work, but also, like, with my students, like, having them come to my office and not just talk about classes, but also, like, what's going on? Are you okay? And just trying to send, you know, positive energy and everything.
And let's promote mental health.
Right.
See someone.
Yes.
See an expert, especially in the Black community. That needs to be spoken about much more. I mean, back in my day, you know, you pray about it. So that's another thing, too. And that's why I'm glad that you're here, because, you know, it's okay to talk to folk, you know, other than, I don't know, your next door neighbor or somebody who may give you wrong advice.
Right.
You know, let's get an expert's advice.
It doesn't negate the prayer.
You can pray and go see.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be.
That's not a plug.
So, Saguinn, a question for you. So how, for someone who's listening, right, how do you know that you're in a toxic relationship and that you need to leave? Because I think
good question.
After your intuition has been squashed, it's hard to even be able to see out of situations that you're in. So how would you describe a toxic relationship with someone?
I think that whoever the individual is, they would need to understand what red flags are. And those are those things in a relationship that, you know, there's no compromise on them. There are certain things that I think we could all agree we would not want or allow to happen to us in a relationship. You're not going to be in a relationship with your husband and he's out all hours of the night and you have no idea where he is and you can't get a hold of him. You know what I'm saying? Or he's talking to you any old kind of way or calling you. You know what I'm saying? There's certain things that are pretty obvious.
Okay. Are they obvious?
Well, no. They're obvious that, when I say obvious, they're obvious that they're happening. Now, I haven't gotten to the perception of how the person, but they're obvious that these things are happening. So then at that point, okay, these things are happening. How are you receiving them? This would be something I would ask someone if they were a client and they were sitting there and they're telling me these things are happening to them in their relationship. But let's say they don't even really see it as a problem. Then I say, okay, so when he's calling you names or you don't know where he is at night, how are you feeling? Because even if it's not registering that, they do know how they feel. That's something everybody can tap into. How are you feeling? Are you in a good mood? Are you happy? Are you secure? And I might even name some. No, I'm not any of those things. Okay, so then what are you? You see what I'm saying? And I get them to tell me what they are so they can hear themselves telling me, I'm not good.
Because if you're in the moment, you'll suppress your feelings.
Yes.
And it'll just, you act like it's nothing. And it requires someone to ask, let me help you put words to it. How are you feeling? And then all of a sudden you wake up again like, oh yeah, this is not good.
My feelings matter.
Yeah. And so many people say, oh man, I didn't even really think of it like that. Like I hear that all the time. Because they're not, like she said, suppressing. They're not thinking. In the moment, they're probably doing whatever they can to escape from it. No, you need to deal with it. Don't escape from it. Deal with it. When he comes home and shrugs it off, no, we don't sweep this under the rug. This is a problem. And if we're not willing to work on this problem, then we have to say, is this relationship worth it? You need, and then I say that you need to say, is this relationship worth it to you?
Right.
Is the good outweighing the bad? What is the bad? You know, all these kind of things the person has to sometimes learn how to look at.
Yeah.
When they're lost in it for years, it just becomes their norm. People can be very comfortable in a dysfunctional norm. You know, you can be in something very dysfunctional for years, but be comfortable in it because it's your everyday.
It's your everyday.
So
you've created coping mechanisms to deal with it.
Yeah.
And they're probably scared of the unknown, too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're like, wait, but if I leave, is that going to look better?
Right.
That was me. What do I look like without my partner?
Yeah.
when you create history and you have habits and who are you gonna like simple things like who am I gonna text all day, like like it's scary to think about, especially if you don't have that self-esteem or self-worth, like who am I by myself,
right?
And that's scary. That's the unknown.
But see, and what you just said is a huge, to me, issue with just a lot of women and men, period, is people don't know how to be by themselves. Yeah. People hop from relationships or situations, because it's not always a relationship, but they have to be talking to someone. There has to be someone or multiple someones that they're talking to all the time, because if they're just by themselves with no one on their radar, they don't like the way that feels.
Yeah.
People are very uncomfortable. So they go out of one bad relationship right into something else. No healing, no reflecting, no let me get to know none of that. It's just I have to be
repeating the same cycle.
Yeah.
They don't even give themselves time to focus on themselves.
So we do need to wrap up. So I'm wondering if the last point we might do is flip Jessica's question. We know what toxic relationships are. What does a healthy relationship look like? And for some of us who might be listening who has never, you've never been in a healthy relationship, you might not even know what to look for, know what it looks like, or what to aspire to. So from your expertise, or anybody in the room from your own experience, what does a healthy relationship look like to you or mean to you?
I mean, I can come from an intellectual standpoint, but you guys are the happily married women.
Looking young. No, I'm just joking. I'm talking about Richie, but...
Oh, boy. Well, he has a little goatee. It's great. I think the number one thing is communication. Oh my gosh. I mean, I know it sounds cliche, but in the very beginning of Richard and our relationship, it was pretty rough because the communication, I'm coming from a Caribbean, West Indian background. Even though we speak English, he's American. I had my set ways, my stereotypes of what I thought he was. And I'm pretty sure he had his in some type of way. And why y'all so loud? Who's y'all, first of all? I mean, yes, I'm loud, but that's not the point. Why y'all pray all the time? Y'all pray for everything. Good grief. Y'all going to 7. So, and then I'll have my, Richard was on his own for a longer time. So there's certain things he taught me, too, because I was very sheltered. Mommy was like, you could stay at home forever. I'm like, but Mom, I need to leave the house. Richard, he was 18. He was an adult on his own. So we learned how to communicate with each other because we obviously knew how to communicate, amongst ourselves. So once we became that unit, things became a lot easier. Richard internalizes a lot of things. So I know now that sometimes I have to pry him or ask him specific questions to get a specific answer because my expectations may be one thing, but he might be thinking something else and vice versa. So we both be on the same page. So communication is key. When we're dating, there are a couple of things we used to do as a couple. And we used to ask, say, hey, let's get a sheet of paper, write down 10 things that you love about me and why. And then we'd read off of each other, read it to each other, and then discover specific things. There are certain things that he said he really liked about me, is the fact that when we were in school, he liked how I was always driven, and he was inspired by that, and that's another reason why he ended up doing a radio show. Because we did a radio show at FIU, and there's certain things. So other than communication, alone time is good. Even though you're in a relationship, it's good to have alone time. Yes. Yes, it's good to have alone time. So we've experienced that, and we love that. And then there's our time too, that we set aside time for us. And we're praying family, so we pray. He's very, very spiritual. very more spiritual than me sometimes. And I'm like, shoot, I grew up in an SDA household, so, you know, and he's like, Claudine, remember, you got to put your faith and trust in God. He's very, very faithful. And then, so we're on that level when it comes to spirituality. So, I think communication's ultimately the number one thing I would say. And then spending time for yourself and understanding, each other.
Okay.
And talking it out. Don't ever have a disagreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got a few more minutes.
I agree with a lot of that. I agree with most of that, right? I think the only thing that I've been thinking about a lot more lately is, like, does the person have the capacity to grow and change with me? Because who I was at 20 is not who I am at 30.
Amen.
Who I am at 40 won't be who I was at 30,
Growth.
right?
Yes.
So can you grow with me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's one of the things that I would add to that. And communication, yes, but communicating in an authentic way. I think, like, when I look at how my parents interact with each other, and I try to emulate that within my own marriage, it doesn't work, right? So it's like, how do I bring myself to the relationship, still get my point across, hear the other person, so that we can actually come to a meeting place where we both leave, maybe not satisfied, but definitely understanding the other person's perspective and opinion. So I would say that to you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yes, growth. And the 20-something Richard and Claudine is definitely not where we're at now. And yes, that growth definitely is evident. And the fact that you're growing together, that is definitely key, for sure.
So a healthy relationship requires communication and growing together. So I'm making mental notes, because I don't think I've been in a really healthy relationship in my entire existence. I think I've always been in a position where I was, like, ahead of the game, like ahead of my partner, and either they didn't want to catch up or they couldn't. And I feel like sometimes with guys, like, it's not a good, they don't want to feel that way. So they look for validation in other ways. And in my last relationship, I think that person really was just, he was looking for other women, you know, so that he can feel validated next to me, you know. So maybe also a healthy relationship is if you're to find someone that's on your same planet. I'm going to say same page. Like, they have to be in your same planet at least. And if not, then you see the pathway, like, that person will grow, like, they're growing at in their own pathway, you're growing at your own pathway, but y'all are at least growing together, and that they're not insecure.
And that conversation might not be easy, because I remember there was a certain point in our relationship where Richard and I were dating, and we're dating for a few years now, like 3-4 years. And I remember I mentioned him. I said, I don't know if this is the way to do it, but this is just my way. This is what happened. And I said, Richard, you know, we're coming to a point in a relationship, because he might have had another time frame as far as how he wanted things to progress. And I said, what are we doing? Are we going to continue dating? Because either, you know, I'm in this relationship for X amount of time. Are we going to move to the next level where we think of getting married, or do we go our separate ways as friends? What do you want to do? And then his response was, wherever you want to be, babe, I want to be there right with you. Well, he didn't really say it like that, but that's how I remember it. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, but to your point, having clear expectations.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people kind of just go into things without having that conversation about what do I need out of this? What do you need out of this? We kind of just go in and assume.
Right.
And then, you know, 5 years pass by and you're like, well, this isn't what I signed up
I'm not
for.
spending 5 years of my life. What's going on? I know, you're a little slower than what he told me eventually he was going to make that step, but I was like, well, that timeline was a little bit longer than, come on now. We've been dating 5 years. What's going on?
Yeah.
So,
it worked out.
We have like about 5 minutes. Saguinn, do you want to
Well, I just wanted to say, what you just said, and that is a really good point as far as expectations, because what I find also, and I'm speaking to young people who are looking for relationships, but believe it or not, it's not just young people that fall into this category. What I'm seeing now in this social media driven world that we live in, so much communication in the start of relationships, in the middle of relationships, even relationships that have been established for several years. There's a lot of communication via text and social media between the couple. Living in the same house.
Interesting.
No. So my thing is, when we're communicating, let that communication be mostly face-to-face, because
that's a good point.
There is so much that gets lost in translation via text. Yeah. And there are a lot of people dating and couples that are out there, and the majority of their conversation is through text. You don't get to know someone through text. You don't get to know. Finding out the expectations, you're not going to get to know that through text.
Yeah.
People aren't having the right kind of conversations when they're dating. There are certain things you should... Yeah, it might sound like you're interviewing them. Okay, you kind of are. You know what I'm saying? But there are things that you need to ask, they need to ask. You need to know about this person. So conversation, you need to walk away from every date really feeling like, man, I know some more quality things about this person. Not, oh, we had fun and that movie was good. And I'm not knocking having fun, but these conversations aren't being had. And then next thing you know, and especially when physical comes into play, because that's already going to make you feel like you're closer to the person than you really are. And then you go get married, and then you really don't know each other. And then you're figuring all this stuff out on the back end. Including, this is not the person I should have married.
So I don't know if me typing came up on the microphone. I'm sorry, listeners, if it did, but I had to write that down.
That was deep.
And I think there's potential for like a follow-up episode about like, what should you be doing in your relationship? Like, what kind of conversations should you be having? How do you communicate better? What kind of questions? I don't think any of us know what questions we should be asking each other when we find a potential partner. We don't know. You just end up seeing stuff and you're like, oh, do I like that or not?
What are your goals?
What are your goals and all that?
Yeah.
So maybe like this is like follow-up potential.
Kind of questions to ask.
Yeah, there's tons.
There are so many
There's
questions.
tons.
I think people want to know. We got to do a follow-up to that.
Yeah, especially early on. You want to know where their head's at.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you right here, but you're striving to be here? Or you okay stuck right here?
But just not just that temperament type stuff. You're observing. How does this person react when somebody gets on their nerves?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that people need to be focused on.
About in relationships.
Don't embarrass me in public. Yeah. Like, no.
So listeners, don't fear. We're gonna. She will do it. Sagwinn's gonna come back, and
okay.
We'll do a follow up to this for sure. But we're out of time, so we do need to wrap up. And I just want to say how powerful this conversation was. And I think we're going to help some people. So I just want to thank you ladies for joining us. And a special shout out to Ms. Saguinn Johnson. Do you have any way people can get in contact with you if they're interested in mental health counseling with you? Or
well, if they're in the Central Florida area, I do have a small private practice that I just opened in Apopka. Safe Haven Therapy. Okay. And I can be reached. Should I say my number?
Yeah, if you want to.
I can be reached at 407-468-7515.
You have a website or?
Not yet.
Okay.
One of our hashtags is Queens Supporting Queens. So I didn't realize, put your put your private practice out there in the universe.
I said little.
But no, it's not.
Small. I guess that sounds better.
There we go. Yeah. But hashtag Queens Supporting Queens. Saguinn has her own private practice. You got her number. She's in the Apopka area. So if you are listening to this and some things are stirring up for you, this is a great opportunity to reach out if you feel like you want to talk about your childhood or relationships or what you should be doing in your relationships. Saguinn is highly credentialed and she'd be willing to help you out. And a final shout out to my two married besties, Claudine and Jessica, for giving us their perspective in the room. And y'all pray for me. I'm still single, but I'm hot in these streets. You feel me? Okay? I'm independent. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Thank you for listening to Black Women Be Well. For more information, you can go to our website at blackwomenbewell.com. Please also follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Be Woman Be Well. That's the letter B, woman, the letter B, well. And stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.